Hello and welcome to the Solve One YouTube channel. My name is Ray, and in this video, part 18 of SpotMicro, we've got some repairs to do. So the other night, a servo horn broke free on the back here. So if all the servos are powered off at the moment. So this servo horn here broke free. So my plastic weld, I found that on the desk, had broken for let go. There's actually a divot come out of the print there, and that allowed this to rotate freely without without servo command. The result of that is to put excessive load on this side. It was carrying all the weight of the back instead of shared across the two of them, and that caused this servo here to actually get quite warm, and as a result it has stretched around here, dragged it around, it's bent it. So when you compare that to a correctly printed straight one, there is actually a bit of an angle on it. Let's move that up so you can see there's now an angle on it. So that's problematic because it screws up all of the kinematics that I've been working on. So we're going to swap that one out and put this on. I also notice there's a nut missing. I'm not sure when that's fallen off. Normally these servos sit pretty snug in here. You can see there's a good gap in there. So this part simply needs replacing. I could have potentially printed it in PETG and been done with it, but I haven't got around to printing in PETG. That is something I've still got to learn to do on my printers. I've just noticed then there is a bit of a gap in this housing here, so I may yet have to reprint this part as well, which I haven't counted on, so I haven't printed that yet. Now before we do anything like that, I think in this case we're going to have to power down the Raspberry Pi. I have been experimenting with my robot lab on this Raspberry Pi as well. I loaded on the latest version at the time of recording, which was 1.1.822. I also had 8.121 prior to that, and I was having difficulty with OpenCV. I had no issues with it in version 1.1.808. Now it seems that the upgrade from 808 to 821 came with a error caused in the Java CPP set of files. And this has happened before. The developers are not sure why that library has issues at this stage during the upgrade. If you remove it from the IV cache, it solves the issue. It'll download a fresh copy and it all works. Alright, so back to the problem at hand. I think if we power it all down and then we can take the back section off. Now I do have some new servos to go in. These ones are rated up to 7.2 volts. And I've got 4 new servos here that are rated to 8.4, but I was hoping to hold off putting those in until I get another 4 to bring up. So I've got 8 servos on hand. I need 12. I've got 4 more on order. When they arrive, I was going to upgrade all the servos then. But in the meantime, let's shut down my robot lab on this. It is currently running OpenCV on it, and OpenCV works really well on it. Let me see if I can show you the OpenCV working on this through the web interface. Okay, so this is live. If I rotate the robot, you can see the image moves, and there's my hand there. Frame rate there is running at 27 frames a second. I have got the Chromium running on the Raspberry Pi as well. This is because I haven't actually installed the MyRobotLab scripts yet. Sorry, the Spot scripts onto MyRobotLab yet for this version. And look, it works quite well. There is a couple of things that I've noticed a little bit different. For example, if you go to the MPU 6050, so I've just launched these using runtime, and you can see I've got an error there of -X. One of the modifications that have been made, or one of the improvements that have been made from 808 into 821 and 822 is the ability to adjust the X offset. So if you look at -X of -3 here on the X, that's actually an error within my MPU 6050. If I swap that out with a different MPU 6050, I get a different value when it's sitting there stationary. There is an ability within MyRobotLab, or within the code, to actually set an offset to bring that back to 0. In 808, this was not made public as such, so you couldn't change it from Python. And now that it's been made public in version 1.1.821, this is now been, I can adjust this back to 0, and that fixed some of this rotational error. There's still an error with the yaw, so if I took this back, you can see that the yaw is increasing even though the robot itself is not turning. So let me just bring on the other camera so you can see at the same time. But that's a camera overlay for memory, and I need my webcam. There we go. So you can see both at the same time. If I roll this just back, you can see it's showing an increase in the yaw, even though it's not yawing. And I actually found that in the code what's causing that. At this stage, I haven't gotten around to formally putting in the fault on that one. I'm going through more of the code as I develop the kinematics. When I know more about what's going on, I'll put it all in one go, so it can be one edit session for it. Right, so what I actually need to do here is shut it down. So we'll shut down my MicroSD there. And this is actually the Raspberry Pi itself. And you can see it's already shut down there, so I can close this Chromium. Chromium is a very big power hog. I've got a low voltage warning, I'll have to check my regulators. Okay, let's shut down the Raspberry Pi. Okay, that looks like all activity is stopped. So now with all the power off, we're safe to pull everything apart. So there's two screws on the underside at the back here that holds this back cover on. Now I have been experimenting with different colors or different yellows in paint in order to paint this robot. I've got these two parts painted, and you can see they're a slightly darker yellow. I think I prefer these over this one. Just got the one coat on these at this stage. It's just an acrylic yellow paint on top of the PLA. Not all parts on spotty yellow. There are some black ones, but I think I'll just stick with black and the raw print, transparent print. I'll probably paint this part, this part, this part, and the shoulder or upper arm covers. And the bottom cover. Now, if I was smart, I would have used the electric screwdriver that I got out for doing that. I'll use that for the arms. Yeah, so I can unplug that, unplug that, unplug my capacitor, reservoir capacitor, and unplug the main power. Now, one of the problems that we have with this when we're pulling it apart is it tends to get front heavy when you take the back off. Probably be smart to unplug all of these wires. Now, with that servo getting so hot, I did actually run the servo tester over it just to make sure that it didn't burn out the servo. Very front heavy. Now I have got a spare foot pad and I'll put that on now so I don't forget it later. And one of the other things I am planning on doing is actually changing the offset of the back legs relative to the front. I was looking at the arc range of motion for each of these feet, and the back feet can actually come up above the body of the robot at the back here, which is in around the middle of the robot, but it really serves no benefit to do that. You don't really need to go any higher than the wrist with the foot. But I could use some extra backward rotation if it was available. So that's one of the things I'm looking at doing, is changing the angle of the shoulder when I do redo all of the servos, which I'm not yet ready to do because I'm still waiting on servos. Alright, so let's just fix this one. I don't have to change much here. Looks like this servo may have gotten hot too, and that may have contributed to it. There's a lot of slop in that hole. It looks like it may have pushed up this way. In any case, we'll fix that in place so it doesn't move again. We'll put a bit of extra filament in it. Bit of a worry that moving. I hadn't noticed that before when I was playing with it. That's definitely stabilized that a lot better. Have a look at this one now. It has cracked in here, so I think I might add extra PLA around here to hold it better. Might poke a little bit in there as well. That one's not too bad, but this one looks like it's gone out around a little bit. There is some movement in that bearing in it. Yep, that's stabilised that quite nicely. Alright, so let's start pulling this one down. You can see the angle that that's twisted at now. And then when looking at it this way. No. Biggest problem here is in order to get that servo out, we have to disassemble everything. Which means resetting the position of every servo. You can see how that's all twisted there. Yeah, I think I will weld that back in there better. I can see that's going to break free. Okay, so that's, whoops, that's hot. That's all the legs back together and reassembled. I am going to have to go through and recalibrate everything. I will put it on the stand for that. Well, I don't have to recalibrate everything. The only things I've pulled apart are the shoulders servos, so that'll need a recalibration on the back. I don't have to worry about the front servos at all. And the right leg, arm and wrist joints will need to be calibrated just to make sure I've got them all set the same, which is something you need to do after every time you pull the servos apart. If you don't get them back exactly the same way, your robot's going to do some funny things. So I will do all of that calibration off camera because it is a time-consuming procedure at times. I've still got to power up my robot lab Actually, I'll start that process now. But there's power lights are now on and the Raspberry Pi is booting up. I've still got to install the spot routines into the current version of my Robot Lab, and I'm still working on a Python based class for each of the legs, and then I'll work on a second class which is a combination of all the feet. So when I've finished those classes, I'll put out another video on that as well. If you like these videos, don't forget to click on like, subscribe, ring that notification bell. It is a form of support that helps the channel a great deal and costs you nothing. If you'd like to support the channel further, I do have a Patreon account. There is a link in the description. Big thanks to my current Patreons, VIPs, Go Lucky and Lorenz Berger, and my Builder Patreon, Elmerels45, all of whom are long-term supporters. And if you have any questions or queries, either leave a comment below this video or join us in Discord. There is a link in the description to the Discord. I'm on the Discord most days, so I can answer your question. If not, someone else in there may be able to as well. And we will see you in the next video.